here on a Thursday. We're so glad to have you. And before I welcome our guest, I just want to thank people for your comments on Facebook, and I'm going to read them right now. I'll just use your first name because maybe you don't want your full name out on the airwaves, but you can join us, comment, interact either by calling 603-816-1590 or visiting Right America Media RAM on Facebook. And there we are broadcasting. Caterino says Trump was right. And this is in response to my little monologue about we're being toyed with and sexualizing children, which just gets me so angry I can't even begin to tell you. And that's why I keep talking about it, among so many other issues that are interrelated. Joan says, I say, no more money to Ukraine. It's not for Ukraine. Gee, right on, Joan. It's being spread around, even coming back here for some corrupt crooks. No more money for Ukraine. It's becoming just like COVID-19. Money, and more money. Congress getting rich off of we the people. Thank you, Joan and Caterino, for participating there. We appreciate it. We want to have as many ways for you to interact and comment as you can because, First Amendment, use it or lose it. And we don't intend to lose it around here. That is for sure. So let me welcome our guest. And we have the luxury of really delving in to some of these topics right now. So I'm excited to welcome him. His name is Dr. Saeed Haider, and he has over 10 years of experience as an internal medicine trained hospital doctor. Since December 2020, he's treated thousands of COVID-19 patients around the country by providing easy online access to off-label prescriptions. Oh, no. We can't have that. That's another censored idea. People who aren't doctors are telling you what you are and are not allowed to put in your body and what you must be forced to put in your body. This is so crucial and relevant for the next election, and the COVID story keeps on going, and we're going to keep covering it. Dr. Saeed Haider, thank you so much for joining us here on Spouting Off.
Hey, thanks for having me, Karen. It's good to be here with you.
Well, thank you. And you sound terrific in our new system. Good. Yeah, you just sound great. I'm not even used to it because I'm used to hearing people on the phone.
Yeah.
So, doctor, since the pandemic, we have, and many of us call it the plandemic, we've seen unprecedented disruptions to our supply chain. And let's dive into this one first. Prepping was once considered a fringe ideology, and now it's become mainstream. Can you say shortages in baby food and the like? What say you on this question?
So, in the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of shortages for things like toilet paper, but now it's becoming shortages of things that are a lot more important to people, right? Like, baby food is pretty important to a lot of mothers out there, and it's very inconvenient when you can't find not only your brand, but any brand, right? Or you have a very limited access to baby food supplies. So that's concerning, but let's take it one step further. So what if we actually had a disruption in something that was really critical, like antibiotics? And so people don't realize that 97% of our antibiotics come from China. And if anything can get cut off, antibiotics could be one of those things that could get cut off, and it just takes all sorts of different ways that this could happen. It could be something as simple as all the baby food factories are in one city in China and they shut down because of the no COVID, the zero COVID policy. Let's just shut down the entire city, and now no baby food's getting out, right? And so the problem is we have just in time supply chains, so we don't have a large supply sitting here. It's not like we have warehouses full to last us for months, right? We have maybe a week or two, right? If the ships stop coming for a couple of weeks, all of a sudden you just run out of everything. And so this is, I think, a big concern. So just from a medical perspective, I think people often think about, okay, I need to, store up some food, maybe some water, maybe have some solar panels, but they don't always think about medications. And before the age of antibiotics, if you had like a minor infection, you could die from it. right? And we don't really think about that anymore because antibiotics are so freely available. But that is a concern. And then people who take chronic medications, they need to be concerned about, what if I can't get access to my regular meds if they're also
Hmm.
coming from China or from India and there's some kind of, shipping shutdown. And it's not just, COVID related, shutdowns. It could be that China goes after Taiwan and then we sanction China and then they sanction us, just like what's happening with Russia right now. Or anything, right? It could be a natural disaster. All kinds of things could happen to get, and so I don't trust the supply chains, and I'm afraid that we're entering a period of great uncertainty in the next couple of years.
Hmm.
And
No question about it. Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So that's just one thing that I'm kind of pointing out to people, and so a couple of different things come to mind when a doctor starts saying, hey, maybe you should store up antibiotics, for example, right? So preppers have been
Mm.
doing this for probably decades, to some extent or other, and they've been doing it by getting fish antibiotics or like antibiotics from Mexico or something. So fish antibiotics are good for a fish tank, but they may not work that well in your own stomach, because they're the same chemical molecule, but they're formulated differently. And certainly the testing for human antibiotics is better than you're going to have for animal antibiotics. And I wouldn't trust anything I buy in Mexico either. And so you can get real human antibiotics for less than you would pay for the fish antibiotics or the Mexican
Where do you get
antibiotics.
them? Where
Yeah,
do you go to
so
get them?
so you can talk to your doctor, or you can come by my website. It's mygotodoc.com. And what we've done is we have found pharmacies that just have like the rock bottom prices for the same thing you can get from CVS. You can get it for like a tenth of the price if you use the mail order
Hmm.
pharmacy that we recommend. Like
Uh-huh.
literally, like $80 versus $800 is the difference in some of these prices. And
Wow.
so there's six kind of foundational antibiotics that will basically cover all your bases, no matter what happens to you at home. These six antibiotics would basically treat anything, and they're common things that a lot of people have heard the names of before, like azithromycin or Z-Pak and augmentin or amoxicillin,
Uh-huh.
doxycycline. These things are used all the time because they're so useful, right? That's why you hear about them.
Right.
That's why a lot of people have had them for maybe a tooth infection or a sore throat or a pneumonia or bronchitis or whatever it is. If your doctor isn't willing to do it, then we can give you those prescriptions and also like a 6-week backup supply of regular medications. So another thing that people bring up is, hey, will they expire? And the
Mhm. I
government
was about
actually,
to ask you
yeah,
that very
yeah, that's
thing.
the number one thing, right? So the
Right.
US government actually tested this about 20, 30 years ago, and they found out
Uh-huh.
that specifically for antibiotics, they can last for like 20 plus years and not lose more than like 10% of their efficacy. And to put that
Uh,
in perspective, I wouldn't even tell you to change the dose if it was still 90% effective. And you can extend it even more if you put it in the fridge, if you put it in an airtight food storage container. So there's things you can do to even boost it beyond that.
uh-huh. Well, that is good news because that should be part of everyone's preparation. I think people are beginning to figure out that what is happening in this country is not accidental. It is not because of incompetence. Something disturbing is going on that is affecting our well being, and some people have it in for us. Uh, your thoughts before I ask you another question.
Yeah, no, I don't trust the government anymore. So there is, for example, just the thing that I think of when you were saying this is there's something
Hmm.
called the U.S. Strategic National Stockpile of medications, right? And
Uh-huh.
so imagine if we had known that ivermectin works for COVID 10 years ago, right? Just imagine that we knew that and that we stockpiled it, right?
Yeah.
Would you really trust the government to give it to you? Right? Like the government is so untrustworthy. I mean, they might cover up the fact that there's an outbreak, or they might just say, oh, it doesn't work. We've new data shows that it doesn't work, and you should really have remdesivir, and we're just going to throw away all this unused ivermectin that we've been storing up for 10 years. So
Hmm.
they have a stockpile of antibiotics, right? But even a supply chain from the stockpile to your home may be broken. But the other things they have stockpiles for are like other more dangerous bioweapons, right? So things like um, tularemia, plague, and anthrax. So those things have like 30% death rates. Okay. I mean, compared to COVID, right? Like a 0.1% death rate. I mean, look at what the kinds of restrictions and the kinds of freedoms they were able to take from us with a virus with a 0.1% death rate. And
Hmm.
imagine if somebody released anthrax. on, every city in America.
God
Um,
forbid.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but these medications, these antibiotics actually treat those things too. So my point is that you can have it sitting in your medicine cabinet. You don't have to rely on the government and, hoping that they'll, admit to the fact that there's an outbreak of something, some killer virus or some killer, bacteria or some bioweapon. You can have access to medications yourself and just treat yourself.
Yeah.
So that I think there's a black swan, that's
Mm.
probably not going to happen, hopefully. But it's just points out the fact that these antibiotics are so useful for so many different things, not just like every
Right.
kind of common condition that you could possibly imagine, but even some like black swan events like bioweapons.
Dr. Saeed, you gave me a perfect opening to talk about ivermectin because when I kind of duck, duck, goad your name,
Hmm.
because I don't use Google
Me
when I
too.
can
Yeah.
avoid it, I saw something about you commenting on ivermectin. And it's funny, you said, imagine if they had stockpiled ivermectin. What we've seen is almost the opposite. When they tell you something is safe and effective, it's not. And when
Yeah.
they tell you it's from horses and you better not use it, then you ought to take another look. It doesn't mean you do a knee jerk the opposite, but you learn to see that what they're telling you, if they do not have your best interests at heart, you probably ought to take another look. So talk to us about ivermectin because you have prescribed off label. That's never been a problem before. What's your thought as to why they had such a war on ivermectin in the first place?
It's so hard to understand. I mean, it for a doctor who's been working, for all the doctors in America who had been working for decades before this happened, it was really a very unusual thing, right? It was something that is basically never happened before, and I mean, it's hard for me to understand or explain. I mean, I guess you can follow the money, right? That's one way of looking at it. That remdesivir was thousands of dollars, and then you can think like, okay, it was like a new pandemic, and they were so afraid of it, and they thought that the vaccines were the only solution, so they wanted to like discourage anything else. And I don't know. I mean, these are things that I can, these it's like grasping at straws. It's like I'm trying to come up with an explanation that
Mm.
doesn't sound crazy conspiracy theory, let's kill the world kind of thing, right? But the farther we get into this, the more it just seems so bizarre because now, we're getting to the point where I'm afraid that the vaccines are driving the pandemic and driving the dissemination of variants that otherwise would not have disseminated, that are resistant to the vaccines, more and more resistant every passing month, and eventually they could become more virulent also. So now the variants like Omicron are more infectious but less virulent. So the
But
next
they're
step in
milder.
evolution, they are
Right.
milder. The next step in evolution that may affect only vaccinated people will be increased virulence only for vaccinated people, not for people who are not vaccinated. And this. I just spoke with Gert Vandenbosch. He's probably the only person I can think of that's really called the pandemic. Everything that's happened, he's been warning of from from very early on. And I mean, if he's right, in the next few months, we'll see a new variant that only attacks basically the ADE that we've all been worried about this whole time, the antibody dependent enhancement that may be coming in the next few months as the
Huh.
next stage in evolution. But it will only affect people who have the vaccine antibodies, right, from the first variant, the Wuhan strain. And even if you had a regular infection in the beginning, you won't be affected by this variant. It's very specific to the vaccine, or it will be.
Boy, oh boy. Well, and gosh, the patient bill of rights, the most fundamental part is that you have a right to accept or reject any medical treatment that goes in your body. And somehow these little dictator wannabes have decided that we're going to throw that out with the baby and the bathwater these
Yeah, you
days.
look at the Nuremberg Code even, right? Not just the Patient Bill of Rights,
Exactly.
but the Nuremberg Code. We've basically, violated every tenet of the Nuremberg Code at this point, which is
Yes.
just shocking to me. And it's hard for professors to even lecture in bioethics anymore, right? Like, how can you, with a straight face,
Yes.
have an ethics class in medicine at this stage of our history? It's very difficult. You
Well,
just look
because
like
we
a
have
hypocrite.
doctors that are selling out their patients and taking the orders from hospitalists. and again, collectivizing medicine. One of the great benefits of medicine in the modern world in America has been to treat the patient as an individual, not as a blanket member of a group. And then fascist Fauci and others have decided that they're going to dictate treatment for 300 million people. Everybody has to do this. Everybody has to do that. I don't know. Call me skeptical, but that's a communist approach,
It is
isn't
absolutely,
it?
absolutely. I mean, it's fascist, it's communist,
Yes, it is.
and to go back to what you were saying earlier, that I also now, anytime I see something coming from the federal government or the mainstream media, my knee-jerk reaction is I don't believe this, right? Like, there's got to be something else, and
Man after
especially
my own heart.
yeah. So especially when they don't explain that, when they don't debate with the people who are trying to like understand their
No, they
position,
shut
right?
them
There's
down.
no debate
And
at
and
all.
I and a perfect segue. I'm going to have to shut you down only temporarily because you've agreed to stay with us, and I'm so glad we're going to have you for another segment. By the way, everybody listening, we've got lots of great comments. I don't know if I can read them all, but I really, really, really want to, because that's why we love having interactivity. And I'm going to read those to our guest. We're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Dr. Saeed Haider. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Spouting Off with Karen Kataline.
Are you tired of the same old snacks? Looking for something a little healthier than that bag of chips or candy bar? Even your average bag of trail mix these days is little more than peanuts, raisins, and candy-coated chocolate. Not very healthy, is it? Allow me to introduce you to White Mountain Munchies. Made from 100% all-natural ingredients, White Mountain Munchies combines unique flavors with nutritional value that will tingle your taste buds and strengthen and sustain your overall health and wellness. Eating good never tasted so good. From Maggie's Maple Madness to Hannah's Heavenly Harvest, Grayson's Getaway Goodies, and our limited edition Christmas blend, Jacoby's Jolly Jumble, White Mountain Munchies offers nutritious and delicious snacks that the whole family is sure to love. Pick yours up now through our easy-to-use online store at whitemountainmunchies.com. White Mountain Munchies, non-GMO when you're on the go.
And now, more Spouting Off with Karen Kataline.
Welcome back. Aha. Welcome back. I knew there was a little bumper there that I shouldn't step on. Karen Kataline. This hour is going quickly. We are talking to Dr. Saeed Haider, and what a valuable piece of information. I mean, his approach. I had so many questions, but I really want to read some of these comments. So, Dr. Saeed Haider, thank you for staying with us. And you're getting people riled, and that's important. People are listening and paying attention. So thank you for staying with us.
Sure, my pleasure.
Someone says, exactly, Dr. Saeed Haider. No suppression of true information and knowledge. The unspoken premise is eugenics to selectively wipe out certain groups of humanity. Welcome to the elite self-serving. See, we're afraid to say that, but our listeners are saying that, and they have a right to think that when they suppress the most safe and effective and cheap drugs, while they push remdesivir that shuts down people's kidneys. What are we supposed to think? A few more I want to read to you. Need to defeat communism. Doggone right. Gert's prediction, Gert, I think that is, might miss, but he could be right also. Hang on a minute. It's too cheap and too effective, talking about ivermectin. Your thoughts about all that? Is it time for us to call a danger instead of worrying that it might be considered a conspiracy theory by the same people that are trying to shut us down?
So I think we do need to speak out anytime we see injustice and an attack on our bodies, especially. I mean, they're hitting so close to home now, and I mean, it's been going on for decades. I can see that the eugenics agenda has been around for more than 100 years, right? And
Yep.
it has, it's what the Nazis were, recommending and doing at that time has engendered a lot of the stuff that's happening in our society now. So, even Planned Parenthood has links to, eugenics from way back then, 100 years
Strong
ago.
ones.
Yeah.
Strong ones.
So,
Margaret Sanger,
yeah.
absolutely.
So it's primarily black babies who are being, aborted, right? So, and this has been in the news recently. So, I mean, regardless of what your position is on abortion, you are seeing that primarily black children. And what else is eugenics other than selectively removing certain babies from the population,
Well, it's
right?
also playing God.
Yes.
It's saying, I'm God, I get to decide who lives and who dies. And of course, I'm going to wipe out certain populations of which I am not one.
And so the same thing,
Right.
Bill Gates is very open about it, that he thinks that we need fewer people on Earth, and that's why he's so heavily invested in vaccines. The way he explains it is that if families are healthier, they end up having fewer kids. I don't know if
Right.
most people buy that, but there are reports that
I think one should stop buying that.
Yeah. So in Africa, there were reports that they did put, I think, HCG or something in the vaccines that literally, prevented pregnancy in women. It sterilized women, and so this is a concern. And what it's more concerning with the COVID vaccines, because of the lipid nanoparticles taking the mRNA and the spike protein everywhere, and especially concentrating in the ovaries. So this should have been tested. It should have been tested for genotoxicity or genetic toxicity or like reverse transcription into our DNA, but it should have definitely been tested for reproductive toxicity. Like, what is it doing to women's pregnancies and their ability to have babies later? And if they have the vaccine during a pregnancy with a baby fetus who's a girl fetus, how is that going to affect the girl fetus's ability to have babies when she grows up, in 20, 30 years? Because it's also concentrating in her ovaries, right? In the fetal ovaries during pregnancy. And we've already had reports of pregnancies being spontaneously aborted because of vaccines. I mean, that it's extremely concerning. There's the data's there in the in the follow-up data from the Pfizer trial. In the pregnant women who ended up getting the shots, there were spontaneous abortions, and a lot of them.
And let's not lie
and
to
the other
ourselves.
thing, just one other thing, that I got to
ahead.
mention here is when people start talking about eugenics, it's like, okay, well, they vaccinated 5 billion people, but then you start wondering, well, was each batch the same? There's this data about, quote unquote bad batches. You can go and look it up. Like, I think it's even like badbatch.com or something. And so like certain groups apparently got batches with much worse side effects than other groups. Right?
That is
so like,
true. I have read
how do you
that.
explain
I don't know if we can corroborate that, but I have heard that in so-called, quote, red states, which really should be blue states, red states, in other words, conservative states like Texas and Oklahoma and Idaho, that there were worse batches. Now, I contend the hardest part for most decent, good people is to imagine that anybody could be that evil. That's one of the reasons we don't want to talk about it.
In their minds, I mean, it's extremely warped, and it certainly is evil, but they think that I assume what they think is that they're doing what's best for humanity, quote unquote. Okay.
Right. To get rid of their political enemies, right?
Not just that, but they have this idea from more than 200 years ago. I mean, maybe 150 years ago from Malthus, that like the earth has a carrying capacity and we can't have too many people, and we'll all starve and die and everything. I mean, it's basically like a superhero movie, right? This is the plot of the Avengers movie. Okay.
Right. But doctor, your area is in medicine and physical medicine, what have you. I'm an old social worker from a long time ago. I worked in mental health, and you can't deny that this is a narcissistic, arrogant view. That there's another word for eugenics. There's another word for depopulation. It's called genocide. That's what it's called. And we've got to start calling it what it is in order to have any hope of stopping people who have appointed themselves God over the rest of us. Let me real quickly, because I want to get one of the questions in that we're getting, and we're getting lots of wonderful comments. I apologize if I can't get everybody's comment in. Hopefully we will continue to do this so that we can get people who can actually ask a question verbally, but right now they're printing them. One of our listeners is saying, aren't antibiotics hard to get? Going back to your making them available for PrEP.
Yeah, so antibiotics are not hard to get. I mean, we've rolled out this kind of service prescribing these kind of 6 kind of foundational antibiotics to hundreds of people at this point all around the country. And you might have trouble at your local pharmacy. You know, the insurance company might be like, hey, why are you getting 6 antibiotics? You know, if you get that experience and the insurance company doesn't pay for it, then you just reach into your pocket and spend the $80 for the mail order pharmacy or the $100 or whatever it is, and you'll be able to get the antibiotics. So you can get your hands on them if you want them. And like I said, preppers have been doing the fish antibiotics and Mexican antibiotics and all that, but you can now get USA, certified real human antibiotics, and it's not too expensive, and no one can stop you from getting them, just like no one can stop you from getting ivermectin. If you really want it, you're just gonna you may have to use a mail order pharmacy.
And I might add, when you're preparing and just preparing for a rainy day, or shall we say America in 2022, think about your special drugs that you may need for your a particular condition. I think people have started to realize that they have to be much more proactive about their own health. And if there's a drug that they need, I've talked to people that are on kidney dialysis at home. I mean, they are so dependent on the supply chain working. And I think we've established that the further away these bureaucrats are from the people, and they are extremely far away, the less they seem to care about how this is affecting everyday people. Your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, these people live in ivory towers. They're extremely, and you can see from some of the things that people like Hillary Clinton and others say, right? I mean, what they say tells you what they think about most Americans, right? They think of them as deplorables. They think that they're, maybe even less than human. How else could they, square what they're doing and the effect it's having on people, with their beliefs? So, I mean, certainly, I agree with you that. And this is extremely unfortunate. I mean, we need leaders who are down in the trenches with the rest of us, right? So we need leaders who understand the majority of Americans, where we're coming from.
Yeah. Doctor, I have so many articles that I was prepared with having to do with COVID. It's interesting. It's like I collect them. The latest one, apropos of what we've been talking about, says this headline: Bill Gates says he has COVID, experiencing mild symptoms. In a tweet Tuesday, the billionaire philanthropist said he will isolate until he's again healthy. I'm fortunate to be vaccinated. Have you ever heard such a pack of lies? He's happy he was vaccinated, even though it didn't do anything of what it was supposed to do, assuming he really was vaccinated. Do we believe that? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, some people, even, the elites, even if there was some kind of deep state thing, even if somebody knows that these vaccines weren't going to work in the very beginning, I mean, I would assume if anyone, it would be Bill Gates who would know that, but I don't know. So I know that, I spoke with Gert Vandenbosch. He's worked with Bill Gates, the Bill Gates Foundation in the past, and he's continued to send Gates, information on his latest theories about how the virus is going to develop. And so, the messaging and kind of the wording, what Gates has been talking about just recently, after Vandenbosch started warning about this, change in the virus specifically for vaccinated people, he's become a little bit more wary now. I mean, he's not coming out and saying what Vandenbosch is saying, certainly, but I think that he knows, because Vandenbosch is a really smart guy, and he's sending, all the emails to Gates. So Gates is aware of, and obviously the CDC, the FDA, Fauci, they've all been aware of everything that we're aware of. It's not like we have access to secret information.
But
I mean, it's all public.
They keep pushing lies. That's the part
that
is so maddening for people, is that every day they show that they lied to us. And let me do this, okay, just to try to work this in. Just a week or two ago, I had the pleasure of interviewing Naomi Wolf, who is a courageous, feminist, leftist, former Democrat. Her latest piece, which was after I interviewed her, was this. It was called "It's Not Over, It's Just Begun." And what she writes about here is people are going back to their lives. Aren't we glad, us elites, who looked down their nose at everybody who said, I'm not taking the vaccine. I'm gonna do it my own way. And they've just gone back to their lives, and there has been none, zip, nada accountability for what they have done to everyday citizens, to businesses, to people, all of it. They have they've just gone on with life. It's what politicians do, isn't it? They just simply go on with life. We lied to you. Oh, well, we'll do it again. Don't worry about it.
And the only reason they can get away with it is because the government controls the media messaging, right? So
correct.
So it's clearly controlled by the government, and this is like you can turn on and turn off like the outrage in the country just by what you publish on mainstream media. You can turn on and turn off the fear. We've seen that with COVID, right? It was 24/7 fear porn, for 2 years, and everyone was out of their minds. And then all of a sudden they just turn it off and start talking about Ukraine. And then everyone just like forgets about COVID.
Pivot. It's the COVID to the Russia pivot. And whatever they tell you you're supposed to be afraid of next, some people say, okay, I'll be afraid of that next. And Naomi Wolf's point so clearly expresses what many of us have felt, is that until there is accountability, you can address this with 2020 election. Anything that we've been censored about, we're not allowed to talk about. That's what tells you they have a vested interest in pushing a lie. I've been saying for a long time, the only way to get people to swallow baloney is if you cannot eat anything else, so you'll starve. So they're going to feed us lies and then censor the truth. What are they censoring? Anything to do with COVID and the lies that they told and insisted on telling again and again and again. Tough question, Dr. Saeed. I mean, how... Hader, I'm sorry, I keep calling you Dr. Saeed because it's easier to remember. What do you think what's it going to take to hold these people accountable?
I think eventually there's going to be something like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Something is going to come out. Maybe it'll be a whistleblower. It'll be something, right? Maybe it'll be an article. Something's going to shift the tide, turn the tide against this whole narrative, right? And it's all going to crumble all at once. And then all of this will get out, and then people will go to jail. People will be, maybe we'll have a Nuremberg 2.0. I don't know. But I'm hopeful that happens, and that they can't continue to cover it up. And it seemed like we were close to that point when the Ukraine thing started. Okay.
And that's why they rolled out something else. But they're not going to do it. They are culpable in it. Right.
But so we were seeing whistleblowers, right? We saw the Medicare data came out, and then Department of Defense data came out, and then insurance industry whistleblowers came out, and then the Ukraine happened, right? So all this stuff was corroborating what we found from the vaccine adverse events reporting system and just what people were talking about for 2 years. And it was coming to a head. Pfizer stock was plummeting, and it seemed like we were just at the point of the dam breaking. And then suddenly all the coverage for COVID just disappears overnight. And we're talking about the Ukraine and, war and invasion and whatever. And now it seems the administration would love to have a war. I mean, it's just like, let's continue to, send money to the Ukraine.
Exactly. They telegraphed it for weeks. They telegraphed it. Inda Grove, I think his name is saying in big caps, we are allowing it. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Inda Grove. Three Amigos says Elizabeth Warren supported by university and government turning a blind eye. Yeah, this gets people going, and rightfully so. They've gotten away with probably the biggest hoax ever, and they just keep going along just like Bill Clinton did. He was caught red-handed with lying and sex in the White House and what have you. And what did he do? He just kept going on as if nothing happened.
Yeah. This is unfortunate that we're allowing things to be normalized, and this is kind of
Yes.
the agenda is to push people to the point where they just they give up and they're like, this is just normal, right? And this is kind of the
Exactly.
agenda in schools, right? Like they want to normalize
Mhm.
things that, were perversions, 20, 30 years ago.
Sexualizing 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
I think it is so important. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful that we have this new platform here where people can express themselves because we're hitting a nerve. I don't think people want to let it go. Yeah, they wanted to let go the fear around COVID, but I don't think they're willing to let go the crimes of COVID. Dr. Hayter, it has been so quick. We got to run. Tell everybody how they can find you, follow you, and order those antibiotics if they wish.
Sure. Yeah. Come by mygotodoc.com. That's mygotodoc.com. You can register for free and ask free questions and get a free ebook. And if you want a prescription, we can do that too.
Dr. Saeed Hayter. Thanks to everybody who participated online. Thanks to Juan and Art for my constant needs. And we're going to just onward and upward. There's another episode of Spouting Off tomorrow at my website, KarenKataline.com. Have a marvelous week. We'll talk to you next week.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at WSMN.live.
USA Radio News.
President Joe Biden ordered flags lowered on Wednesday as the U.S. marked 1 million COVID-19 deaths.
1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table, each irreplaceable, each leaving behind a family, a community, forever changed because of this pandemic.